As we continue on our month-long podcast series on attachment styles, now we're going to talk about sex and how sex becomes a battle of attachment styles. Now, you're not actually fighting about sex, you're fighting about safety. Welcome back to the Secure Husband Podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach and founder of SecureHusband.com. Most men think that sexual frustration in marriage is about libido, or attraction, or aging, or maybe we get too busy, or she's just not into it anymore. Now, certainly those things do come into play. But if you're an anxious or preoccupied husband, especially married to an avoidant leading wife, the sexual tension in your marriage isn't about sex at all. It's about attachment. The real battle happening below the surface is you want sex to feel connected, reassured, chosen, wanted, safe. She avoids sex when it feels like pressure, demand, emotional responsibility, loss of autonomy. That means you reach for sex to feel close. She avoids sex to protect herself from feeling overwhelmed. You use sex to soothe anxiety. She needs emotional space to feel safe enough to want sex. You feel rejected as a person when sex doesn't happen, and she feels invaded as a person when sex is expected. Neither of you really understand what is going on at this moment. You label it as she's cold, she's distant, she doesn't care about intimacy, she doesn't desire me, she never initiates. She's thinking he's needy, he just wants one thing, he just wants to get off, he only wants sex, he doesn't want me. But what's really happening is two people with their attachment wounds using opposite strategies to feel safe and interpreting the other's behavior as pain instead of protection. Always assume goodwill. This is why sex becomes a battleground. It's not because you don't love each other. It's because you don't understand what's being fought for underneath the surface. I want to look at some sexual dynamics of this anxious, avoidant attachment dance in marriage. And you're going to see yourself in a lot of these, but not in shame, but in awareness, recognition. Again, never to blame, never to guilt, never to shame. Just to give you an idea of what's going on. Some things that you're seeing happening, maybe why you think these things are happening, what she's actually experiencing in her nervous system, why this destroys desire and safety. And I'm going to give you some tips on what you can do instead. And I guarantee you it's not just try harder. So let's look at why you use sex to feel connected and how she experiences it as pressure. A lot of this ties into what we talked about in the last podcast about having a healthy relationship with an avoidant wife and why and how she gets triggered. In this particular situation with sex, you want sex because you want closeness. You want reassurance. You want intimacy, yes, but you want proof that the relationship is still alive and thriving. You're not just a horny dude. You're emotionally wired to bond through sexual closeness. And that is very common with men who are anxious attached. For you, sex equals, we're good. She still wants me. I matter here. I'm not being rejected. We're still emotionally connected. You're not trying to take something from her. You're just trying to build safety, return to this place of feeling safe. So what does she feel? He just wants sex. He just wants something from me. If I say no, then I have to deal with the consequences. If I say yes, I am agreeing to closeness that I don't feel safe with. I don't get to want sex. I get pressured into sex. For avoidant wives, sex is not automatic connection. Sex that happens under emotional expectation is pressure. We talked about that pressure last time. She doesn't withdraw because she doesn't want sex or because she doesn't find you attractive or desirable. She withdraws because she doesn't feel free or safe in sex with you. Desire doesn't exist without that freedom, that safety. When you don't have sex for a while, you start to feel uneasy, maybe even a little panic inside. Not because of the act of sex, but because it feels like you're just drifting further apart. And your wife may be thinking, I don't avoid sex because I don't love him. I avoid it because I feel like I'm being used to regulate his emotions. You see why that's not rejection, it's just a mismatch of nervous systems. I want you to shift your thinking. Stop initiating sex from need initiate from grounded desire. This idea of, babe, I want you, instead of, I need this to feel okay. And don't make sex the test of connection. It's not your scoreboard. Find lots of different ways to connect. Build closeness outside the bedroom without a sexual agenda, and you'll be able to foster connection inside the bedroom. Learn to regulate your anxiety before you ever reach out to her physically. Because if your nervous system is asking her to calm you through sex, she's always going to lose desire, no matter what. You have to bring calm, presence, a grounded emotional self, not demand and pressure, into that sexual arena. And this is why no feels like rejection to you, but when she says yes to sex, it feels like self-betrayal for her. Because what happens to you when she says no? If she says not tonight, what is your brain telling you? You're not wanted. She doesn't desire you. You're losing her. You're not enough. The relationship is dying. Whatever is spinning around in your mind, that's the anxious attachment alarm going off. You're not hurt. You're threatened. Rejection to you is loss of safety, loss of connection, loss of emotional grounding. And you start spiraling. Because when she says yes but doesn't want it, you end up with starfish sex. You end up feeling even more disconnected. She's thinking, yeah, I'm just agreeing to this so he won't be upset. No, I am not in the mood, but I'll have consequences if I say no. I'll feel guilty. I'll have to deal with the backlash. She doesn't feel it as desire. She feels it as obligation, that she has to abandon herself to protect her peace. I talked about this last time. Avoidant wives don't lose desire because they aren't sexual. They lose desire because sex becomes self-betrayal. She says yes with her body, but her nervous system is screaming no. And every compliant yes kills desire. I did an earlier podcast on starfish sex, where she just lays there. And this is an example. She may be there physically, but she's really not there. What do? Stop making no, not tonight mean something about you. You stop reacting emotionally to it. And you stop using sex to measure connection. Find other ways in addition to sex to measure connection. Don't let sex be that scoreboard. If she says no to you, I want you to try something. Just say, I get it, babe. It's okay. Thank you for being honest. Let me know. I still love being close to you. Maybe not tonight. What that says to her is if she's not into it and not feeling it right now, that she can say no and still feel that you're grounded. She still feels safe. So from there, it's not that, oh, great, now I can say no more often and I don't have to deal with his consequences. What happens most of the time is she doesn't have to feel pressured or guilted. And when you do come to her later on, more grounded, she feels your energy. She maybe responds a little bit better and she feels more in the mood for it. When she sees sex as a choice and not a duty, then desire can return. But when you need sex to feel close, and she needs to feel close before sex, then sometimes you guys are in a cycle and a pattern that somebody has to break the pattern. If you're thinking sex reconnects us, and she's thinking connection makes me feel safe enough for sex, because you bond through sex, she bonds into sex, and you're reaching for her physically, her body to get that emotional closeness, and she needs emotional closeness first to feel safe sharing her body, and neither of you are wrong. You're just opposite. One of you has to break the cycle. And that's when you can start to build connection outside of the bedroom, and that removes the distance. Anxious men pursue sex to try to remove that distance, but if you can connect in more ways than sex, then that removes that distance and fosters connection. And avoidant women, they create distance to feel safe again. In her world, if the relationship feels unsafe and tense and uncomfortable, sex feels unsafe and tense and uncomfortable. If she feels manipulated and pressured and emotionally threatened, sex will feel like a trap to her. If she doesn't feel free, she doesn't feel desire. That's why it's so important to work on connection. Break the cycle. Because in your world, sex If it doesn't happen, you feel insecure and unloved and distant. And the longer it goes, the more anxious you get. The more anxious you get, the more she withdraws. You see the loop. You're trapped in that loop. You need sex to connect. She needs connection to want sex. Neither of you can move first unless you break the pattern. You start connecting in other ways. Build connection without a hidden sexual goal. And it seems counterintuitive because our pride and our ego says, now I'm just giving her what she wants, no sex. No, that's not true. It's not that she doesn't want sex. She wants to feel safe having sex. What that does is it allows that emotional closeness that doesn't always have to lead to something. She can let down her guard. If you stop turning every affectionate moment into foreplay and just learn to sit in closeness without turning it sexual, she starts to feel that. I remember my wife, she's like, I just would love a hug without it having to mean anything. Just give me a hug. See, when she starts to feel like you want to connect because you love her and you want to have connection, she can relax a little bit. When she feels that there's no expectation all the time, her body starts to relax again. And that relaxation, that's the first step towards desire coming back. And you feel undesired, I get it. And she also feels emotionally responsible for your feelings. You feel undesired because she doesn't initiate. You feel unwanted because she doesn't respond the way she used to. And you're thinking, if she loved me, she'd want me. But we talked about what's happening inside of her mind on our last podcast. And if you look at it through the lens of sex, she's saying, I won't initiate because I know that's what he wants. He wants sex more than he wants me. And I don't feel free to have my wants listened to. She feels like it's this requirement to perform. Avoidant wives don't hate sex. They hate obligation sex. The cost, the emotional cost, is greater than the physical act of it. And the more desperate a man gets for sexual reassurance, the more emotionally heavy sex becomes for the wife. It's not sexy. It's not intimate. It's just pressure. It's emotional threat. What do? Stop expecting her to fix your insecurity through desire. Build your worth outside her sexual response. So much of the podcast material I come up with surrounds these areas. When you stop reading her as a scorecard and using sex as a barometer of your worth, and you learn to want her for her and not using her to feel safe, that builds confidence. And confidence is attractive. Emotional dependency is not. Desire flows when you're grounded and you're confident and you're secure. If you're starving for validation, it blocks desire. And sex becomes your reassurance. You're using that to calm your anxiety, and that's a burden to her. When you have to use it for your own validation, she feels that energy. I talked about that last time, how your wife can feel that energy, even if you're not getting angry and yelling and screaming. But if you're getting quiet or you're sulking or you're withdrawing, she feels that energy loudly. And she avoids sex because that energy, that anxiety makes her body tense. Again, that's the loop, because you're reaching for sex to know that we're okay, and she's pulling away because she's saying, I need to be alone and not be pressured to feel okay. And of course, that triggers you more, and you're thinking, I got to try harder, and then all of a sudden she disconnects even more. The only way she feels safe is just shut down, and it creates the pattern. You think she's rejecting you. She thinks you're trying to use her body to soothe yourself. You just want sex. You just want to get off. Both of you are wounded. Both of you are misunderstood. Neither one of you is wrong. There's not one bad partner, one good partner. You're just using opposite survival strategies. Again, I talked about that a lot in the last podcast. What do? Stop making sex the scoreboard of the marriage. Learn to calm your nervous system. Learn to calm that anxious attachment going on. Learn to do that without sex. Now, did I just say, give up sex? No. Learn to use other ways to calm your attachment system instead of sex, and that will allow you to build that connection to bring sex back to the table. You got to create safety that doesn't require sexual access in there. When you no longer need sex, because that's what we think. We think, I need sex. I'm a man. I need sex. You need sex to validate you. There's the part of the sentence that was left out. When you no longer need sex to feel validated, she becomes more open to wanting sex again. It's easier said than done. This is a journey. This is why it takes so much time and work to move from insecure attachments like anxious attachment and preoccupied attachment into more secure. You have to do that inner work. You have to talk to that inner child. You have to reparent that little boy who learned that he had to earn love and earn affection and earn value. When she's avoiding touch, that's triggering something that you experienced in your childhood where you were not emotionally fed. You didn't have your emotional needs met as a young child by your caregiver or your parents, but for whatever reason growing up. But when she avoids touch because she knows that it's a form of manipulation, I think this is probably one of the biggest invisible triggers in the anxious avoidant dynamic is when you reach for affection, she experiences it as sexual expectation. You think a kiss is just a kiss, but in the back of your mind, you're starving, you're lonely, you will take anything and try to move forward with it. A hug, a kiss. But what happens is in her nervous system, she's feeling, if I let this progress, if I go along with this, now I'm agreeing to something more and it's not something that I'm comfortable with. And if I pull away, he's going to get rejected and withdraw, and then I've got to deal with the consequences of that. If I let him touch me, now I'm abandoning myself. She's thinking it's not safe to accept affection unless I can deal with going all the way. That's when she stops hugging. That's when she stops the non-sexual touch, the rub on the back, her hand on your shoulder. She stops kissing. She stops leaning into physical closeness. And it's not because she doesn't want to, but because touch has become step one. It's because touch can't just become touch. It has to lead to something every single time. I did this so much in my marriage. My wife would say, I just want you to be able to show affection and not always have to mean that it's leading to sex. She told me, she's like, I don't avoid touch because I don't love you. I avoid it because every touch now feels like it has to lead to sex. I just want to be close without having to have sex. Now, she's not rejecting you. She's rejecting the emotional baggage that is attached to that. I want to let that stick for you. This is probably the central concept that I had to really let sink in my marriage. She's not avoiding touch because she doesn't love you. She doesn't think you're attractive. She doesn't think you're desirable. She's rejecting the emotional baggage attached to it. Practice giving affection with no sexual escalation. With actions, show her that affection is safe, that it doesn't always lead to sex. Touch her without sexualizing every moment. Just a hand on her back in the kitchen, a hug. When her body trusts you again, desire is going to start returning. But when you initiate from fear and you're afraid to touch her, that's another issue. Because when you initiate from fear, now whether it's sexual or non-sexual, but let's go back to sexual right now. When you initiate sex from fear instead of desire, see, sex, there's two ways the guys initiate sex. You can initiate from grounded desire, calm, present, confident, that just says, I want you. Then there's initiating sex from fear. I need to know you still want me. I'm afraid we're drifting. If we don't reconnect, I'm going to spiral out of control. In the bedroom, that energy doesn't turn her on. It shuts down her nervous system. Because women can feel that difference between being desired and being used as emotional validation. We think she's rejecting sex. She's actually rejecting the emotional weight inside of your initiation. Her unspoken reaction there is, you're clinging. You're clinging. You're not coming towards me because you want me and love me. She feels like you're coming towards her to fix you and use sex as the tool. So she feels more like she's having to emotionally regulate you than a sexual partner. I said this last time in the podcast. Avoidant women don't shut down because they hate sex or they don't love you. They shut down, again, because it feels like they have to manage your anxiety. So when you do initiate sexual connection, and again, this is really after you've worked on the non-sexual component. When you can work on that and you get to a point where sex does come back on the table, if you can initiate when you're calm and not when you're panicked, if that's the word I'm really looking for, but when you're feeling needy, you stop using the sex as this soothing of yourself. You learn to soothe your nervous system in other ways. Some of the lines are, I need this to relax. I need you to have sex with me because I need a good night's sleep tonight, or I've got a big day tomorrow, or whatever. You're using the sex for something other than honest, grounded connection. And what it does is when you can stop using sex as this reassurance, this validation, you can start building sexual tension back with your presence. Not your pressure. Your pressure is going to kill it. But with presence, calm, grounded, strength, regulated. And then you let desire flow from enjoyment and not desperation. It creates a desirable man. She is wanting to desire you, but her guard is up and she can't. But when you are centered and grounded and secure, you become more desirable. That's the hardest part of all of this, is that painful phase that couples reach in their marriage where she shuts down sexually. Now, sometimes there are elements in there that have nothing to do with you. Stress, physical, hormones, external things that are happening that are not about you. When she's stressed at work, she comes home and she's just exhausted. She may not feel sexual. There are elements in here that are nothing to do with you, okay? But the result is she's not feeling sexual. You start feeling unwanted. You start resenting her for it. She feels the resentment. Then she withdraws farther. You get angrier, more frustrated. Then she starts to get numb emotionally. That's how you end up feeling like roommates. Her numbness, her withdrawal, it's not punishment. Again, it's self-protection. For her, if sex has meant obligation or managing your reactions or abandoning herself to keep the peace, agreeing to sex just to prevent conflict, her survival mechanisms kick in and it disconnects arousal because now it's survival. It's not sexual. It numbs that desire because it's trying to stay safe. Again, protects her from being used to soothe someone else. Now, I keep hammering that over and over because I want you to understand that it's a trauma response. It's not rejection. If you can change the pattern, instead of getting angry or withdrawing or getting butthurt, getting cold, getting passive aggressive, shutting down emotionally, or try to be the nice guy and try harder and then explode out of resentment when it doesn't work or blame her. The resentment never reopens a woman's body. Sexually, safety, emotional safety does. And I just really want that to sink in because instead of trying to restart sex, rebuild emotional safety first. Drop the resentment. It's poison to your marriage. It kills desire. Take ownership of how that pressure, the need, the insecurity, it changed the dynamic, and then do the internal work to repair that wound. You got to heal from the inside. It has nothing to do with the sex. The sex part is the symptom. It's the wound inside. It's that inner child. Reparent him. Give him that love. Give him that self-compassion. Connect to a higher power. Understand unconditional love. Understand inherent worth. Your worth is not defined by her sexuality. Your worth is defined by you. You determine your own worth. And again, you connect with that higher power to find those loving actions, those things that you can do to repair that wound inside, the things that you can do to help remove the pressure and the need and the insecurity that feeds the dynamic. Then she can start to feel safe and feel aroused because now you're reparenting your nervous system. She feels desire again instead of responsibility to regulate you. It's that idea of freedom, not obligation. And I'm blown away by how attachment wounds take over in a relationship. It's amazing how it penetrates every little crack in a marriage. And everything becomes transactional at that point. Babe, if you respected me, you'd initiate. Well, honey, if you helped more, I'd feel more in the mood. Well, if you were more affectionate, I'd be more sexual. If you weren't so anxious, I wouldn't shut down. All of a sudden, now intimacy, it becomes, it's like sitting at a bargaining table. You're thinking, why should I do more when she doesn't even want me? And she's thinking, why should I give my body when I don't feel emotionally safe? You see how it just penetrates every nook and cranny of your marriage. Two people waiting for the other to move first. It's self-protection, pride, ego, a scoreboard of unmet needs. I always think of it as like a standoff. It's like emotional resentment standoff. And you get the dead bedroom, and it's fueled by mutual hurt. The tragic part of a sexless marriage is both people want connection, but neither one feels like they want to lose themselves to get it. And again, one of you has to break the pattern. You got to stop the cycle. As I say, you're the one listening to this podcast. Let it be you. Becoming the secure husband. Stop making sex the condition for connection. Just learn to remove all scorekeeping. Not just sex, but, who did the dishes this week? Granted, you want fairness, but if you're keeping score on every little thing, remove that. Shift from this way of thinking of how do I get sex back to how do I make safety an integral part of the relationship again? How do I make it the new normal? You stop the negotiation part. You replace negotiation and scorekeeping with generosity that expects nothing in return. That is a blow to the ego. That's a blow to your pride. Why should I? She's not. Here's the thing. You start to break the cycle. What happens is you become more secure, and that fosters desire to grow. Not in pressure, not in strategy. Now, I can already hear it right now. What if I do this and it never comes back? I always say, this is outcome independent. What will happen, will happen. But what you have to focus on is not that end result. You focus on you. You focus on becoming the man that you want to be. You focus on becoming the secure husband who operates his life out of grounded, calm, peace, and just see where it goes. If you become grounded, you become secure, and years go by and it never gets better, well, then you've got some decisions to make. You've got some boundaries to uphold. But the only way sexual attraction is going to return in an anxious, avoidant marriage is when the anxious man stops thinking that the solution is to try harder, be nicer, do more chores, read more books on foreplay and sexual technique. The truth is, no woman becomes sexually attracted to the man who makes her feel emotionally responsible. And no avoidant woman is going to become sexually open to a man who needs her body to regulate himself, who turns sex into emotional survival, who can't respond to a no without panicking or sulking or getting angry or trying to push and persuade. If he ties his self-worth to her sexual response and cannot hold emotional space without needing reassurance, sexual desire is not going to return. It's not a technique thing. It's a safety nervous system thing. I want you to write this down. I keep this on a little card here when I'm talking with my guys. Safety leads to trust. Trust leads to warmth. Warmth leads to playfulness and lightness. Lightness and playfulness lead to desire. Desire leads to sexual connection. You don't fix the sex first and then we'll feel better, we'll feel safe. It's backwards. Sex is not the cause of connection. Sex is the result of connection. Start with safety and trust and work your way all the way to desire and sexual connection. Regulate your anxiety instead of outsourcing it to her. Become emotionally safe, not emotionally demanding. Stop making intimacy a scoreboard. Make affection free again. Create space instead of pressure and build that trust. No agenda. Let her body belong to her again, not your validation system, and you work on soothing yourself. That's when sex becomes free. The closeness, it's not demanded, but it grows organically when she feels safe being her and not responsible for you. Your desire returns, not because you pushed for it, but because you removed the pressure. And there's times where I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. This is so hard. Even when I knew it, I didn't embrace it. I didn't feel it. I felt like I was shamed for wanting sex. But you're not the bad guy for wanting sex. And she's never the enemy for pulling away. You're just both trying to feel safe. You tried to get close so you could calm your fear of disconnection. She pulled away so she could calm her fear of losing herself. Neither of you understood what was happening underneath all of it. The resentment and the silence, the shutdown. But now you do. Now you understand this shift from the wounded little boy, anxious, to a secure man who no longer needs her body to prove that you're loved, and you can love her without requiring her to soothe your wounds. And her guard lowers. You stop needing sex for reassurance. She can finally want sex for connection, because attachment wounds are what creates the battle in the bedroom. I hope this podcast was helpful for you. I hope you're enjoying this month-long series on attachment styles. If you're not a subscriber to the podcast, would you hit that subscribe button? And if you're a regular listener, give me a review. I'd appreciate that. And share this episode with someone who you think may need to hear this. And if you need help getting unstuck, overcoming those anxious attachment tendencies, and want some accountability, visit securehusband.com, fill out that form. Let's set up a free 30-minute consultation. Just a conversation to see how I can help you out. And I'll see you again on the next Secure Husband podcast. Thanks for listening.